So it says that strings are delimited by double quotes, right? Double quotes delimit the strings, like this hello thing, right? Um, and there it also says that we can insert new line character inside our strings, and it's called escape character or control character. Basically, it specifies \n as a new line, and it may be inserted right in the middle of it. For instance, I can say hello world, like this, and if I build this version of the program, if I build it in and if I run this program, you see that hello world is actually printed on two different lines. And I can even add one more new line character right here to be able to separate each word from the next line so that it's easier to see. So these new line characters can be inserted anywhere inside the literal string, right? So strings specified with quotes, we're calling them literal strings. In other words, fragments of text literally expressed inside the code. So that's that thing with \n is called a new line character. In documentation, typically printed without space, new line like one word. Okay. Okay, so cout is a character output device like this. And by the way, also a quick note that standard library facilities header that we used, that downloaded from the book, is declaring namespace, standard library namespace, directly in the scope of this file. And therefore, it's possible to simply get rid of it. And when you read the book, in a lot of places, cout will be printed simply after, after inclusion of stdlib facilities. It will be printed without the standard library namespace qualifier like I had it, right? So if, for instance, I build this program and run it, it should run just fine, build and run just fine without standard library namespace. But I tell you that in my practice, I like to remind myself that cout, which stands for character output stream, does not really belong to my program. It came, or my own code, right? It came from standard library. So in my practice, I always do this, right? It's your choice. I'm sure when you read the book, you'll be automatically trying examples and it'll work just fine. But if we didn't use this, right, and if we rely actually on standard library headers like this instead of stdlib facilities, which is kind of brings everything together for our convenience, in this case it will not compile. See, I try building it and it tells me error, cout undeclared identifier. It basically says you try to give me this, but you never defined it. I have no clue what it is, right? So because it was properly declared in stdlib facilities, but here if you use iostream, which brings cout to the code, you have to use standard library namespace, and you have to remember to qualify it like this. If you are stubborn and you say, I really don't like the style of using standard library namespace in front of many components of standard library, you can do something like this. This directive using namespace std simply says everything that comes from standard library headers is just spilled out into this function body, okay? And therefore, if cout was not defined by us, then compiler is recommended to look up inside the library components, and sure enough, it finds inside a standard library namespace a thing called cout, starts working with it and realizes, oh, this is a standard output device, so should be fine, right? So this should compile just fine. Okay. Oh no, it again, it tells me, oh, I see, I typed colon instead of semicolon, and it gave me again this error, syntax error, which is kind of user-friendly, good error, right? So I need to change to semicolon to compile it properly. Okay, very good.